footage on record, and sometimes, present times, a lot of kids don't really know too much about the sacrifices that were made in World War II. And since you're a veteran of World War II, we're going to ask you a couple questions. So maybe you can start by telling us a little bit about when you were drafted, or when you found out that you were drafted, or if you volunteered.
Yeah. No, I didn't volunteer. I was working in a shipyard, what they call defense work, repairing ships. Before I got my notice, draft board notice. Well, I wasn't supposed to be called because at the time I had 2 children and they weren't taking fathers. So I don't know what category they put me in, but I got the notice and I had to leave, and that was in May of 1944, and I had to leave.
Did they tell you how long you would be
No,
gone?
they couldn't really. This was for basic training, for 17 weeks.
Okay.
Basic training.
Where?
Infantry training, South Carolina. And
Now, how did you get to South Carolina? Did you have to fly or drive?
train.
A train, okay.
Train.
And had you ever flown before or been on a train?
Oh, I've been on train, yes,
Okay.
before, yes.
Okay.
But it was a long journey, and it was hot. I had the windows open, and it was a steam locomotive. And a couple of fellas fell asleep, and being that the windows were open, when the train was chugging going uphill, the soot from the stack would come down, and it would go all over the guys, and some of them with their mouth open. But that was an amusing part anyway. But it was a long trip, and we got down there. We were offered cold cuts, sandwiches, until they placed us where we belonged in the barracks.
And when you got down there, what type of training did you have to endure?
It was 17 weeks of basic infantry training.
Like as far as the physical aspect of it, what were things that you had to do?
You were supposed to be physically fit already when they drafted you. They examined you at the time. You were supposed to be physically fit then.
Mm-hmm.
But if you weren't physically fit, you became physically fit, put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And go out every morning and train and come back at night, and you were off at night. And if you're going to go to movies or you go bowling or whatever, but you had to be in at a certain time for bed check.
And did you make any friends while you were in training that you had to go into combat with eventually, or that you keep in contact with now?
It's funny that you asked me that, because the fellas I trained with, not one of them was with me when I got overseas, because they split up in different whatever. And I hadn't seen any of them after I left training.
Oh, okay.
You can ask me the question and you'll get more of an answer, whatever you want.
Okay. Now, when you were through with the training, where were you? Did they tell you where you were going during your training, or is it kind of like you wake up one morning, they say, okay, you're ready, you're shipping out, you're going here?
You always hear, they're going to ship out, but you don't know where or how. But I wanted to say in the basic training, I said it was infantry training, but at the same time they tested us for radio, and if you could distinguish certain sounds and stuff more than anybody else, in other words, they picked you out and sent you to what they call radio school for code. And I started training for that, along with the infantry training. It was part of it. But everybody didn't do that. Only those that were picked out, I guess.
Okay.
So maybe halfway through that training, things were going so bad in the war in Europe, and they needed more men. And they didn't cut our training, but they put us all straight infantry training, took the radio part away, because like I said, they needed more men. So that was at the end. Excuse me?
How old were you at this point?
When I was drafted, I was 24.
Okay. I would say that would be on a little bit on the older side.
I was like an old man, more or less, because I was in with 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds. And I wasn't the only one. There was a couple other people in there, approximately my age. But it really didn't make much difference at the time, because 24 is still young as far as training goes. And like I say, you can endure what they give you.
And what was the general attitude of the men that you were training with at that point, even though they had not shipped out yet? Were they still a little bit homesick? Were they scared? Did they act like they weren't scared just because you were told to do so? Or
Well, let me say that anybody that came from a home family, home atmosphere, yeah, they were lonely. Same with myself. I didn't mind really going in, but like I said, I was more or less a family guy. I had 2 children already, and I didn't care to leave, but I mean, that's what we had to do.
so then you got your orders. The radio thing didn't work out. They needed more infantry, men on the ground, so to speak, I guess.
Yeah, well, even the radio men, they were on the ground too, but this was
Okay.
just a special training for
Okay.
that. You might have been in a different area, see?
All right. It was like what your expertise might have been.
It was what?
It was what somebody who had expertise in radio, that's what they would do on the ground.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you were shipped out to where? Where were your orders?
Went to Southampton, England.
Okay.
And I thought we would be there for a while because my father was born there and his father was born there, so I was all ready to, to look up some people in the family, so to speak. Well, they changed my mind because they told us that we didn't get the amount of leave that we would have gotten if the war was in a different position. In other words, it wasn't too bad. We would have been stayed there for maybe a month or so, whatever, and I could have looked up the people that I never saw and they never saw me, but I never got to do that. And while we were there, the Germans had what they call buzz bombs, and they were like missiles today. They would fly over and they were propelled by an engine, and coming from Germany across the channel and all, it would take time.
Did you come on a boat or a plane?
Well, when I went over, I was on a boat.
Okay, yeah.
We get behind in our story.
Yeah. I forgot to ask you that.
I'll say
Okay.
in a minute. Anyway, when you heard those motors, so to speak, stop, the bomb was coming down. And this is what the people of England had to endure during that whole war. It was really a catastrophe, but I say they lived through it. And
So they would hear the engines as they were sailing overhead, and then once the people on the ground did not hear that noise, they knew to brace themselves.
just going past. They missed, say, so-called target.
Okay.
So they figured more or less they're safe then. But when they did hear them, they had bomb shelters and stuff, and they would go into them. Getting back to what you asked me about going overseas, how did I go over? I went on the big ship, one of the biggest ships they had. They converted it. It was a cruise ship. They converted it for Army personnel, and it was the Queen Mary. Queen Mary 1. Queen Mary 1 and Queen Mary 2 were ordered, in other words, to take troops across the sea. It took about 5 days to get across, to get into Southampton.
And how were the waters? Were they rough? Were people getting seasick at all?
Yes,
or?
yes, but see, these boats were so huge, they were one of the biggest boats of their time, that it didn't make too much difference, yes, but it was a little bit rough, yeah.
And what did they do during the 5 days? Was did you have to
you
work
had-
on the ship, or
No.
did they give you like time to just sit and relax?
You had like shifts that you slept in, up and down, like on deck or up, whatever. They changed the shifts, for people, how many people they had. But we arrived in Southampton safe enough. They had what they call corvettes. They were the English type of destroyer to come out and meet the ship for protection. And in other words, to see that we got there safely in case the enemy had bombed or planes or whatever come in, they could fire back.
So it wasn't, let's see, it was not that you were going directly into battle then.
We didn't really know. We Well, we're going to Europe. That's it. You know.
Right, but you see a lot, like in the movies, for instance, with Saving Private Ryan, they open up with that real bloody scene.
Well, that portrayed pretty much the truth in the beginning of that movies. But like I said, I didn't get involved in any of that. It was D-Day, and I was fortunate. And some people got into there, and it was very bad.
Right.
You couldn't do nothing about it. That's where you are, you know.
So, did you remain on the ship, or did you go onto land?
No, we went into Southampton docks, and we unloaded there, and we got into homes, you know, whatever, like barracks and stuff that they put us all up in, until we got our orders. And the captain, one of the captains had come in and said, you may not think so, but he said you'll be in action sooner than you think. So that's all the information they gave us. If maybe you ask more questions, I can answer.
Okay. So anyway, this captain comes in and says you're going to be in action sooner than you think.
Well, he said
Meaning?
they wouldn't give you a direct date or anything when you were going to ship out, just that it's possible.
Okay.
So that everybody was aware, you know.
Right. So then, when was what was the next thing that occurred then? Did you where did you have to fight? Did you actually have to go on the front lines when you went?
We were shipped to across the channel in these landing barge, and that was going to Le Havre. And when we got to Le Havre, we were shipped out of there by truck again. We headed into, which we didn't know even then, but we could hear the gunfire and we knew where we were going. And we're up and through the Hurricane Forest. And that was on the, what they used to call the Red Ball Highway. That took the soldiers from Le Havre and that into Germany and into battle zones, so to speak, you know. And that was up through the Hurricane Forest. That's where we went.
Now, were you stationed with all Americans, or were you at this point were you thrown in with some other nationalities?
No, it was Americans, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you have the opportunity to meet with any foreign soldiers?
Not really. No, just
Okay,
in,
so it's
in
all Americans.
our own collection there, what we had.
Okay. So then tell me a little bit about, once you got shipped out and you went through the forest,
Yeah.
and you could hear the gunfire, then what next?
Well, as we were going through there, the people that went there before us, they probably had fought most of the battle in there.
Okay. In that forest.
And it's in the forest,
Okay.
yes. And we came behind them, and we had stopped different places, like you come to a spot in the forest.
Now, do you march through the forest, or are you like?
Oh, yes, we're
you
on
march
foot.
through.
We're on foot.
Okay.
We're on foot most of the time.
But you're marching as like a group, or you're splitting up and kind of like running and ducking and hiding?
Well, you had a company, and in other words, you were supposed to try and be as careful as far as not being exposed to whatever, if there was any gunfire going on. And they had snipers in the trees that would shoot at you. But again, I said, when we were up through the forest, somebody had cleared most of that before we got into anything. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't a big battle area for me.
Okay.
But we went into certain places that were cut off, like a little town or whatever, and we liberated a couple of soldiers that were stuck back in there from maybe the battle that had went on before we came. That is, American soldiers.
And they were being held hostage?
Well, they were in the battle, whatever, and they were there.
Okay.
Somebody would have to come in and, I guess, liberate them because of the action that went on.
Okay.
But I said, like, when we got there, that battle had been over.
Right, but you still did
so
see...
we had rescued some of those fellas.
But rescued from what? Meaning...
Well, they might have been in that area that they were boxed in, they couldn't get out, or they were surrounded, or whatever.
Okay, okay, so they were basically hiding then?
Right,
okay.
Right, yep.
And then, so you were very friendly faces to them?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So these were American soldiers.
Right, right.
But after we did that, we had marched forward. We didn't know the land that we were on, so while we were taking these fellas, they had left and we went forward, and we just kept going after that. And as we went, we had Germans come out and surrender in back of us and give up.
Oh, after you even passed?
Yeah, yep. So that proves that there was somebody there, you know, before, you know. And we were marching, but I told them, go ahead, because she didn't know where the landmines were, and they didn't like that very much. Whether they knew where they were or not, we don't know neither, but I figured they would go before us, instead of us being blown up, let them be blown up as the enemy, you know.
Okay, so you kind of took them as hostage then.
Excuse me?
They were hostage, prisoners of war, or hostage?
Well, yeah, we captured them.
And
yeah.
then that's what you would do. You would make them march ahead of you.
Yeah.
Okay.
After we got,
What type of weather was it, by the way?
right then, it wasn't that bad, as far as, I'm saying, the snow and stuff that came later. No, that wasn't too bad, because that was in November.
So you were just in full uniform, and that was it?
regular uniform.
Okay.
Yeah. And
What type of weapons did you have?
had an M1, that's a rifle.
Okay.
And later on, when we had gone, like I say, going back to the story, when we entered like the Hurricane Forest, they had a pile of guns, whatever kind, that were confiscated in a pile, and you could pick up really whatever you wanted.
And you did that?
And well, I had a rifle, but the thing is, they had a Browning automatic rifle that was heavy, but would protect you much more. In other words, you could fire automatically, you know, and whatever you were shooting at. It's not just it's just so many bullets and you had to load again. Well, you had to load them anyway, but I'm saying they had a reservoir of
like 50
bullets and stuff that would fire many, you know, other than just the M1 rifle.
So it was like a spray of bullets?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
you could pick that up, or pistol, whatever, you know.
Okay.
And we got up in there a ways.
And you were where now at this point?
We're still in the forest.
Okay, still in the forest.
And when you ask me where, I can hardly tell you where it was because I didn't know myself at the time. We were just in the forest. But
and what would you eat?
Excuse me?
What would you eat?
Well, you had kitchen that would follow.
Oh, okay.
Because, let's say, everybody moved.
Right,
Everybody
okay,
moved. And
all right.
food would get fed, yes.
Okay.
And at one point, the tanks came in with us. And we got to ride on the back of the tanks. We couldn't go inside them. We weren't a crew. But we were infantry with the tank.
Okay.
And up through the Hurricane Forest. And we had to watch, as you went around the bend, the Germans had put in, I forget what they call them now, but explosive. And at a certain time, if you hit a certain thing in the bend, it would explode cats off the tank.
Mm-hmm.
That's what propelled the tank, was the cats. And in other words, that would make the piece of equipment immobile, except that you could swing the turret around and fire. More question.
So, how long were you in the forest? Like weeks? Months?
No, it wasn't too long.
And then after the forest, you come into a town?
We came to a town, Echternach, Luxembourg, and we relieved a unit, like a company, and our company moved in. And our job was just to hold that area. They were going back to get more or less rest and rehabilitated and whatever.
So they don't leave then? They're just taking like a little break? Like those men don't get sent back home?
No, not back home.
Okay.
No. And I was always not sure. I think it was Reims or Rennes, that the outfits were sent back to. Whether that was France or what, I think it was. But in other words, our job was just to hold this position, you know.
And this whole time, were you able to have correspondence? Did you have letters?
Yeah, you sent a letter or whatever, you know, and you wrote home.
Okay.
And they would pick them up. And I guess, well, I can get ahead of my story again, but maybe some of them wouldn't get home.
Okay.
For whatever reason.
Okay. So anyway, so you end up in this relieving the unit.
Town.
Okay. You relieve the unit, and in this town, are there civilians there?
No.
Okay.
It's
cleared out already.
It was cleared out.
Okay.
But it was a resort town. People would go there for vacation and stuff, you know. And they had stores and stuff, which we went into on our own time, you know, and
Nobody manning the stores?
no,
No, okay.
and they had beautiful dolls. And then when I had taken a couple dolls with us, you know, I was going to bring them home naturally, but that never got to be. But like I said, our job was there just to hold that supposedly, and there was no hand-to-hand fighting or nothing going on there. And we were across from a river, and I had a squad, maybe about 8 guys, and we all had different things to do. But we took my squad, and we were on supposedly to guard a bridgehead that was blown out on this river so that nobody came across. That's all, and that was our job. And we could see the Germans on the other side of the river, and they could see us, but nobody fired small arms. But they had artillery from both sides. We would fire, they would, not me, but the artillery that was on our side, they would fire, and mortar shells, and the Germans would do the same, you know. Luckily, if you didn't get hit with it, you got hit with it, whatever, but we didn't really get hit with anything there. And we were there maybe about 2-3 days or so, and the town it's like a square in the town, and the kitchen, our kitchen, was up there, you know, in
Now,
town.
was the town all bombed out?
Yeah, it had been, in other words, that had been a battle area.
Okay,
You know?
okay.
And the cooks and that, they would cook up there in their kitchen, and we were based like at what they call a CP, command post, that is. And that's where we would generally stay, but now we were out on duty, so we had to stay where we were to guard this bridgehead. So one day, we're inside, there were buildings there, and a street. And we're inside, and I heard something. I didn't know what, you know, it's just like click, 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 click. Well, the Germans had hobnail shoes, and I didn't relate it to that immediately, you know, but I'm going, what the heck? Because there was no Germans in this area, you know, so I just stayed inside the house, and I said to the other guy, just stay here a minute. So who comes walking down the street? German soldiers. 2 of them.
Just 2?
Yes, 2 soldiers, that's all. So the other guy said, oh, you can shoot them, you know. I said, hold off, because we don't know what the position is here, you know. I say, we didn't know anything about how close the Germans were really or whatever, except what I told you about across the river.
Right.
And this area we were blocking, that's where they would have to come across, so to speak. Nobody had come across. So I said, no, let them go. So we let them go, and they marched through. They didn't know we were there neither. And like I said, yes, we could have killed them.
So you're the guy that was next to you. It was a thought. It was a thought right away.
Oh, yeah. But the thing is, see, if you don't think about it, once you started that, once you shot them, we didn't know, like I said, we didn't know the condition.
You're opening up a can of
We'd bring
worms.
fire on ourselves,
Right.
you know, and we didn't know. So that just went, you know, that was it. So I had sent somebody back for food, and he didn't come back right away. You know, I thought nothing of it, you know. And time went on again. I sent 2 more fellas back for food to the kitchen. Nobody came back. I said, I didn't send nobody more to go back, you know.
You must have been hungry at this point.
Well, you know, you would get breakfast, and you would get dinner, you know, whatever.
Right.
So I said, come on, we better go back and see what happens, you know, what's wrong. And now, again, we had heard nothing. No noise, no nothing. I'm saying, gunfire, nothing. But when we got back to the square, there was dead Germans all over, bicycles, and nobody that we could see immediately. So we said a battle went on, and we hadn't heard a thing. Now it might have been because of the wind, but we weren't that far away, you know.
Right.
So we still stayed. We were looking for whatever, and saw somebody waving us, you know, to come on. And again, we don't know who this is, you know. So we keep looking. Then I see it was American uniform. That is, not that it couldn't be a German dressed in American uniform. In other words, that was it, and that's what had happened. They waved us on, told them to come on back in, and they said, yeah, a battle went on here, and so forth and so forth. One of the other fellows that I knew at the time said that they weren't with us. They were in the square, and when whatever happened, they went down the cellar, and the Germans had thrown a grenade in the window, and this one kid picked it up and threw it out again, and he saved, or whatever would have been blown up inside that cellar, you know.
Right.
So he was more or less a hero. Let's put it that way, a hero.
Right. Because he
But,
could have. He didn't know when it was going to go off. He would have lost an arm. Or,
You only have so many seconds to
Right.
pick that up
Right.
and throw it. You have that many seconds, just that you can do that.
Right.
As long as you know when it was thrown.
So it's like, like catching a football. You can't miss it. If it comes down, you're picking it up, and that's it. You
That's
got to
right.
have good
Otherwise, you're done.
reflexes.
Yep, you're done.
Yeah.
So that's what had happened.
So when he threw it back out, it must have landed on them.
Well, whatever. Whoever he hit, I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
Did you see
After
those
that,
two Germans again?
excuse me?
Did you see the two
No,
Germans? Okay.
No. And this is the odd part about it, see? And as the story goes on, you'll know why.
Okay.
We hadn't known anything about it. So we were there for, I don't know, a couple of days yet. And we're up in a building after I was taken out of here. Went up to a building, and we had regular food and that for a couple of days. And all of a sudden, we're up in the building. We hear rumbling, we hear noise. Sound like tanks, you know. And where's this coming from, you know? It didn't come from here, from this way, you know. So as I looked out the window, and the fellow I was with was right alongside of me, we looked out the window, and we didn't have a bazooka that could really knock the tank out, but the tank was coming up. And it was one of the new Tiger tanks the Germans had. And again, he could have shot the fellow that was driving that. He was standing up. His head was out of that tank.
Right.
Or commanding, whatever he was doing, but he could have shot him.
But once again,
we would have drawn the fire on ourselves, you know, on the people that we had there. So they probably figured that we were there someplace, not knowing where, but they blew the whole other side of the street out. Nobody was there. Tank. He swung the turret around, whether he saw us at the window or whatever he did, but he fired one round, and it hit our building that we're in. And the fellow that was right next to me, that I was so close, we were touching, the shrapnel hit him, broke his arm, and I didn't get anything. Really wasn't hit, you know. But what had happened, the Germans had made a big breakthrough miles up the river, come through either in tunnels or whatever, through the mountains, and brought all the equipment, everything. They came in with everything they had, tanks and all. And in other words, it was a position where our captain, or lieutenant he had surrendered. But it got to that point where...
So when you surrender, that's it. They don't fire? That's the rules of war?
Supposedly. Yes, supposedly. And, you know, if they see, or if you're going to fire them, naturally they're going to fire you, whatever the circumstance would be, you know. But, yeah, they come up, and before they come up in our building, I had taken the M1 apart, and I hid the pieces and stuff. So, in other words, they couldn't use it. So that was about it, and that's really all, if you want to say action, that I got into.
So then what happened? You can't leave us hanging there.
No, but the rest of it is the time I spent as a prisoner of war.
Okay.
So they had a couple of the young Germans talk to us. A couple of them speak English. I'm bringing it. A couple of them spoke English, and we had cigarettes. I didn't smoke, but I had the cigarettes because you get issued them, you know. So we gave them cigarettes, and they talked, and they said, well, for you, the war is over. We have to still go, which it's common. They're fighting for what they think is right, and we're doing the same thing. So, I mean, they were a foot soldier, like ourselves, but they didn't like the Air Force because the Air Force would drop their bombs and go, get out of there. So now they're one-on-one with us. So their life is just like our life, being in the forest and whatsoever, had to fight, you know, whatever. So then they
So
turned
they
us...
were decent.
Excuse me?
They were decent.
They were what?
Decent?
Yes, yeah, oh yeah. Well, again, like I said, they were like us, so they told us New York was bombed, you know, and because I recently came from there, I said, no, I said, you're wrong. It's not bombed. But I said, I'll tell you one thing. I said, we marched through Koblenz, which was a big town. I said, and that's in their area. I said, and that was bombed flat. I said, there's nothing left. So whether they believe it or not, that's up to them, because they had a good propaganda machine.
And wait, were you telling the truth?
What's that?
Were you telling the truth?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
I didn't know if you were
No,
just
yeah.
combating
No, we tell
their
the truth.
story.
Yeah. But I say they were regular soldiers, just like we were. So there wasn't too much, hard or bad feeling there,
Uh-huh.
And then we were handed over to whoever and marched. And we got to a...
Now you marched through streets? They made you
we-
march?
Oh, yeah, yeah. And like I said, we didn't know where we were really... the
Winter
area.
by this time? Wasn't it winter by this time?
Was it what?
Winter.
Oh, yeah, of course, November. This winter was... It's October, September, October, it's winter over there,
Oh, okay.
But it hadn't snowed and that, till later on, But they marched us, and I never got to ride on the railroad, what they say, railroad, to take you to and from a stalag, a prison. We marched all the time. So we got to a stalag, which number was 4B. And again, I didn't know where this was. When we were marching, I didn't know where we were going even.
How long did you march?
Not too long then, not too
Okay.
much then.
Okay.
But after we were in that stalag, getting back to the story again, this was the big drive that Germany made. This was their last defensive, do or die
Right.
action. And that's how come they broke through and everything. And our upper echelon generals and that really didn't have any idea. They thought that the Germans were pretty well beat. So maybe they weren't cautious enough or whatever, but they left a hole in the fortifications. In other words, that's where the term bulge. That's like a line, but it starts here. There's a big spot here that's open, and another line. So that's the bulge. It just made an opening, and that's what it was. Battle of the Bulge, that's what they call that.
Mm-hmm.
So because I was picked up the 19th, and that started on the 16th.
Okay.
So getting back to marching to the stalag, and we
Did
only
you eat
stayed
all
there.
this time?
Excuse me?
Did you eat?
No, we didn't have. They didn't really feed us. No.
They did not feed you.
No. Till we got to the stalag, then they got an issue of bread, but that's all that we got was.
God, how could you not die of starvation? Did they give you drink?
Water was very scarce too. No, we didn't get much of anything, Wendy. No. In other words, they weren't treating us like they should treat us under the Geneva Convention,
Okay.
taking care of us more or less.
Okay.
And I stayed in that 4B. They had what they call, this was in like an old building, like a barrack, but they had stalls, like a wooden board, and they had like 2 tiers or 3 tiers, and you would sleep on that. You don't have no cushion, no this, no that, nothing. But we were there for a short time, and I don't know how long it was. But we marched out of there, and we marched to another place. And that was 8A, Stalag 8A. And there for a short time. But to make a long story short, the rest of the time we spent marching through all that weather, always marching, bedding down in a yard or some kind of a corral, and then getting up. In other words, you were cold, your feet, your hands, and that. But they kept pushing you to march. If you had dysentery, if you squat to go to the bathroom, whatever, they would probe you to get you moving, And when they used to send
Well, where would you go to the bathroom?
right there, wherever it was,
You
go
didn't
right
care.
there. I'm getting to a little bit more than that. We went in, they marched us through a town, but every town they came to, they previously sent ahead a messenger to tell the people that prisoners of war were coming through, just to alert them, whatever. And got into one town, and even myself, I had dysentery and that, and it was in the town. Now you got a couple people around. You didn't have to, you couldn't worry about them. You just sat down, squat, did your business, and got up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you would never do that any place except the position you were in.
War, yeah.
Some of the people in Germany were all right. When you marched through their town, they would put water out. Others would spit at you, you know, and holler and yell and everything. But in other words, nobody ran out to grab you on it or hit you or anything. But we kept marching. We had dogs guarding us as we walked with the German soldiers. They were guards, and the dogs would march alongside. You made a break for it.
Were they German Shepherds?
German Shepherd dogs, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there again,
You can be heard, your voice.
Why?
Oh, you put subtitles on there, the question.
Oh.
so there again, we just kept marching, and that was it. We knew us, marched us into the Allies. See, they knew they could read the writing on the wall, that the war was nearly over. In other
Okay.
words,
So why did they march you into the Allies?
Because
Why not just say, to hell with these guys?
because they didn't want to go the other way, because if they met the Russians would slaughter them.
Ah,
The Russians and the Germans, you know, they were very bad to each other.
okay.
So that we used to tell them, yeah, the Russians are coming. They didn't like that, you know. But he was fine. I said the captain was, and we got to a point where it was I think it says Braunschweig, which would be Brunswick in the English language. And the Second Armored Division liberated us, come in, and from there we went around looking for food with a chaplain. I didn't know he was a chaplain until I see his cross on his thing, you know. But anyway, we went out looking for food, and he came with us. That is, other than before the full army had come up to set up and make, you know, headquarters and so forth. They had their own kitchen.
You had
and
to
stuff.
find food immediately because you were starving.
Right. So we went a couple places and got they were great for preserves too, the European. And we got up in the attic of one building there, and we had jelly, jam, whatever it was, you know, which was, anything tastes good. I omitted a part in the story. At one of the, either 8A or 4, I think it was 8A, the guards come in and asked if anybody want to. They didn't force you to. There was a woman on the farm needed some help. I don't know what the heck we were doing even. Wood or something. Piling wood. I forget what it was even. But in other words, they asked you if you wanted to go, you know, they would go with you and to give the woman a hand. So we weren't, you know, we're not doing anything else, you know. So myself and a couple other guys said, yeah, we'll go.
But wouldn't a ton of guys want to do that?
Excuse me?
Wouldn't, like, everyone want to do that?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
I don't think so. And the thing was, you didn't have to do it.
Okay.
Unless they wanted to shoot you and said, you go do it or you're dead, then you would go.
Right.
But no, it was asked to volunteer. So now we got talking to this woman. And she showed us a letter and said her husband was a prisoner of war in America. Get beer a couple times a day. In other words, she told us how good they were being treated over there. She was very nice, very nice. And she made us, and I don't know what I would eat it today or not, they call bloodwurst soup. And we ate that. And that was like a good big meal, you know, because we hadn't been eating. And some of the fellas that were with me come over maybe before us. In other words, there was no telling when or where anybody was captured with all the prisoner of wars. You were mixed in with all in.
Oh, okay.
Even English and everything.
Oh, okay.
But some of those fellas, like I had come from the States only a couple months before, so I was in pretty good physical condition. These other fellas that were there for quite a while, they were starving. And I have pictures, and I'll show you someday when you come down. I have them, I sent for them, of the condition of some of these soldiers that were prisoner of war, from not being fed. Maybe she don't want it. So, from not being fed, malnutrition, they were like 90 pounds. And maybe they were 150, 160 pounds before they were captured. So I figure myself fortunate in just what happened. And I say it's fate what happens. If I wasn't captured, maybe I would be killed. And when you go into the Army, you never think of getting captured. You think of being shot, wounded or killed.
Right.
But you never think of being a prisoner. Yeah.
Now, did you ever keep in contact with any of these fellas that you served with?
The fellas that I trained with, some of them wrote my wife asking about me and telling about what they, whatever story they had to tell. But they're asking about me, and they knew I had been prisoner of war then. Again, I keep forgetting, I go back, when we were liberated, that chaplain wrote a note to my wife because she didn't know at the time I was missing in action. That's the telegram she got.
Oh,
She didn't know where I was dead or alive.
So all that time she never knew.
So he wrote her and explained to her that he met Harold White and he's in good health and he's fine and blah, 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 before the Army ever officially. And so my wife, in appreciation, sent his wife handkerchiefs. Says you sent handkerchiefs or something that you had made to that chaplain's wife. You sent something to her.
Not handkerchiefs. I never made handkerchiefs. My mother did.
Okay, we're rolling. So where did we leave off? The chaplain, all this time that you were a prisoner of war, Nana didn't know, but the chaplain had informed her before the Army could.
Mm-hmm. And I said, when they liberated us, we flew from where we were to Le Havre. That was known as Camp Lucky Strike. That's what they named it. And they deloused us when they got us there. We stripped, put us in a tent, and powdered us down with DDT.
Oh my goodness. Is that why you lived so long?
And that's outlawed today, DDT.
Yeah.
But then they didn't want to feed us too much because of being empty all this time. Your stomach shrinks, so
Right.
forth.
Then you get
They
sick.
gave us eggnog. They gave us eggnog to build us up, so to speak. And after that, there's not much more to this story because
You were sent
come
back
home.
home.
Excuse
did
me?
Did they have like a parade or anything?
No. And we come into, well, first of all, we sailed home on a smaller ship. It was, it's something like a hospital ship, and it took us like 10 days to get back. It only took us 5 to go across. But we landed in Jersey City.
And I want to know what your first American meal was. Do you
And
remember?
I can't. Yeah, I can't think of what it was even what we ate, but it was Army food. You had to went back into the Army,
I meant
And
when
again,
you
I
got.
think we went down to Fort Dix. That's where we went.
Oh, so it wasn't over when you got home. You still
No,
had things to
no.
wrap up.
All right, we. No, I was still in the Army. I wasn't discharged yet.
Uh-huh.
But the thing was, I had to get reassigned, and it was funny to me because they reassigned me to the camp that I trained in, and I had been made sergeant when we were in the Hurricane Forest, and they put me in Camp Croft where I trained, and what we did was train the men just like I was trained. And that's what our job was down there. And I liked the Army. Like I said, I had nothing against the Army, and the food was great. If you were what they call a mama's boy, you know, you had all kinds of complaints, you know. I don't like this, I don't like that, or whatever. And oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. But I mean, the Army life was good. And if I was really single, it would be a good life to stay into, as far as I was concerned, you know. But again, all I wanted to do was get home, you know. So, like many of them wanted to get home, but I said, being a family man, it was more so, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, I trained down there for a while, and then because I was a prisoner of war, because I was married and had 2 children, and let's see, France, went to Le Havre, France, and from there we went into the forest, into Germany.
Which forest was that? Okay, if you could tell me, maybe just tell me like what your route was once you flew over or came over on the ship. What was the exact route? Like, if you could tell me, like you went.
We had to go to from New York. We went to Southampton, England, on the Queen Mary, and from there, let's see, France. Went to Le Havre, France, and from there we went into the forest, into Germany.
Which forest was that?
Hürtgen Forest, and that's where our field was as far as what we were supposed to do. And I was with the tanks for a little while, infantry with the tanks. We rode on the back of the tanks, and
Then from the forest you went to where?
excuse me.
Then from the forest, where did you go?
Well, the story shortens after that, because the forest is mainly what I went through, because everything for me happened fast, as far as going overseas and getting into so-called action. It was only a short while. I was in there in November, like the beginning of November, and in December we were in a holding position. We relieved another outfit that was there, and from there we were supposed to go back to Reims, Paris, Reims, France, and reorganize and so forth. But as we relieved the other outfit, we were there for, I really don't remember how long, but I had a squad on a bridgehead that was blown out, and we were just there to see that no Germans came across that. We could, I don't know whether I told you this before, but we could see the German soldiers on the other side. They could see us, but there was never any small arms firing at each other for whatever reason. But artillery and mortar shells, we would fire, they would fire back, but no small arms fire really. So we stayed there for a while, and I used to send back, and if I told you this, I don't want to repeat myself.
Everything can be edited out.
Okay.
This is able to, I can chop things off.
All right.
And what I'm trying to do is just get some more footage so that I can have different shots of you. Because
Oh,
right
yeah.
now it's
Okay.
kind of boring because I just have you, the one shot of you just sitting.
Oh,
Now
okay.
I zoomed in, so it's a little close up.
Okay.
And what I'd like to do is include in the video, I can include a map. So if I get a map of like the Hürtgen Forest, where would you go from there? Like if you could tell me in a row, because in the video I want to make a line go from the forest to wherever you went next to where.
I couldn't tell you much of that because we never knew where exactly we were. Even marching when we were prisoners, we never knew the closeness of whatever, or to try to escape where you would go. So that, like I say, the army, the people in the army, a lot of times didn't know where they were going even half the time, but just following orders, that's all.
Okay.
But when we got into Exonach, Luxembourg, that's where I was talking about this bridgehead, that we were just there to see that no enemy came across there, which we did. And one day we were in a building on the corner by the by the river, by the bridge, and we heard footsteps. And not knowing the situation, we just waited to see who or what it was. Well, it turned out to be German foot soldiers coming down the street, and we didn't want to fire on them because, again, we didn't know the situation, because if you fired on them, just between you and the enemy, it may bring in artillery, it may bring in tanks. We didn't know what the situation was. Supposedly, there was no action going on there at the time, but we were just to protect that bridgehead, so nobody did come across. Well, we let the Germans go, and previous to that, I had sent back one or two people from my squad to pick up food and at the kitchen, and they never came back. So I sent somebody, you know, not knowing the situation, I never sent anybody else. When they didn't return, there had to be something going on. So without being ordered or whatever, we traced back on the way back to the kitchen. When we got to the square, there was bicycles. A big battle had gone on there, which we never heard anything of. And we didn't really know who was there besides ourselves, whether it was an enemy there or what. But we saw somebody near the kitchen, and they waved us on to come into the square to the kitchen, and we didn't know who they were at the time. But we hesitated. What we finally found was our own troops, and we were all right. But a big shindig went on there with there was bicycles laying there, people dead, so forth. And we heard nothing of it where we were at the bridgehead. Whatever reason, I don't know, the wind or whatever, because it wasn't that far. Like you say, you would be able to hear something, but we heard nothing. And it was either that night or the next night, we heard rumblings, and whether it was trucks, whether it was tanks or whatever it was, what had happened.
What did their tanks look like compared to yours? Like, were there any differences?
They had, yes, they had.
What did your tanks look like, I guess?
How can I tell you really what they look like, because there's so many different tanks.
Mm-hmm.
But they had the German 80, what they call the 88, and they were very good firing that. They would fire that at one man. So the other tank that came in was a newer tank they had, was a Tiger tank, and he came up the street because, after all, they knew we must have been there, but where, they didn't know. They came up the street, and the turret on the tank turned around and was blowing the other side of the street, the houses. And we were up on the opposite side in a room up in one of the buildings. And there again, I could have shot whoever had his head out of that tank, but if I did that, it would draw the big guns right on us, you know, so we didn't bother. But as he went across on the other side of the street, he finally swung around anyway, whether he saw us or what, but he fired at our buildings. And the man standing next to me was hit with shrapnel, and the building was like concrete, you know, like stucco, whatever. And it broke his arm, and it didn't touch me at all, and I was that close to him. So as time went on, they knew we were there, and they made their headquarters right there, so that eventually they searched and they found us, and our lieutenant had surrendered, so that we had to, in other words, we had to give up. They come up in the room after us, and I broke down my rifle, took the firing mechanism out in order, and hit it, just so that they wouldn't get another piece of equipment. And they just marched us down, and they were foot soldiers like us. They weren't German Air Corps or anything. They were fellas doing what they thought was right for their country, and what we thought was right for our country. So they were just people. And we talked with a couple of them. They spoke English, and I didn't smoke, but we had a couple of cigarettes. We gave them a couple of cigarettes for them to smoke, because the German cigarettes, they tell me, were horrible. So they must have liked what we gave them, you know. But they said to us, for you now, the war is over. and we still have to go on fighting, which they did, So then they marched us away, and what else can I say? We just marched to a stalag. I think it was Limburg, and I think that was in a town called Gorlitz. I think it was Gorlitz. And then from there, went to a camp, a stalag, a German prison camp. I think the name of that was Stalag 8A.
Is
And
that
I
where
think
you got your?
you got the tag from that prison.
Mm-hmm.
And after
Who
that,
made the tags?
you got the
Did
tag.
the prisoners have to make the tags or no?
What's that?
Did the prisoners have to make the tags or they had them
No,
already?
they gave us the tags. We were numbered. You're numbered.
And you had to wear that just while you were in the prison then?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And as we marched along, they had German shepherds, police dogs, guarding us as we walked. And we came to another stalag, which was 4B. So just reiterating, we were captured Echsenach, Luxembourg, and we marched all through the winter, and we finished up at a place called Braunschweig, which I think is Brunswick in English. And we were liberated by the 2nd Armored Division. And the captain, the German captain that was head of our march, could foresee what was happening, and he marched us into the Allies. They would rather give us up to the Allies, American Allies, than the Russians, because the Russians would kill them immediately, because they massacred so many of their people. The Germans massacred a lot of the Russians, and they never forgot that, and the Germans feared the Russians more than the Americans. So that was a good reason for him to march us into the Americans. And he was fine, but a couple of the guards went to run off, and they were shot down by jeeps with mounted 30 millimeters, gun. And befriended a major, and at the time we didn't know it, because I never noticed the cross on his lapels. He had the major insignia, and we went out looking for food, because during all that time we got a loaf of bread for so many men for so many days. That's all we got to eat, that's all. And that bread was made out of, now you'll laugh, but it's true, was mixed with sawdust and whatever else was mixed, which you could consume. But at times we all had dysentery and so forth. And
You had to be deloused, didn't you?
excuse me?
You had to be deloused.
Oh yeah, well that was after I say after we were with this major, we went out looking for food, and he got talking to me, and he got my name and address, and he said, "I'm going to write my wife and tell your wife, because the last thing my wife knew was that we were missing in action. She had never heard anything more about us. And this was the first chance to be notified that I was still alive and a prisoner of war." So he wrote his wife and explained to her to get in touch with my wife, which she did. And that's how my wife found out that I was still alive. And shortly after that, we went back to Le Havre, France, Camp Lucky Strike, got deloused, and was shipped on the way back on a
What'd they delouse you with?
DDT, which is banned today. But they powdered us down with that. And they fed us, not knowing what to give us, because we were so long without food, the stomach would be shrunk, and they didn't want to overload us, but they made barrels of eggnog. And that's what we had. In other words, like a liquid diet for a while. And when we got aboard ship, I guess I don't really recall too much about it. But
What type of ship was it?
I only assume they would call it, say, a hospital ship. Bring back maybe wounded and so forth. We were
Big or
back.
small?
Excuse me?
Was it big or small, and do you remember the name?
When you say big, I couldn't tell you the tonnage or what, but compared to the Queen Mary, it had to be small. So, and then we landed. We were all stayed up all night to see the Statue of Liberty. When we come back in, because that's the last thing we saw going out, you know. And that was right in Jersey City, like I said, and we marched out of there and we got on to, I think there were buses, it could have been train, and we're back to Fort Dix, where I started.
Now, what did you get as far as badges and medals? Can you describe them?
Bronze Star.
And why? What were they given to you for, each of them?
I think I have a commendation on it. It'll tell you. I'll find it later, and you can read it. But the Bronze Star it meant, in other words, that you must have been in action, and we got the infantryman's combat badge. That's a rifle, silver rifle. And like I said before, I was no hero, so whatever medals I would get, you get the good conduct medal, you know, whatever would come, whatever your outfit, even if you weren't there at the time, but you would belong to that outfit no matter where you were, you would get the merits from that outfit.
Wendy or something? She's thirsty.
And if you have like a fleece blanket,
Yeah.
probably stuck on it. I forgot to get it out of the car.
See, and only the combat infantryman gets the combat infantry badge.
What about this first picture here?
This is the U.S. troops inspect the German prison camp after in other words, after the prisoner was liberated in that. Troops of the 1st U.S. Army are shown at the entrance to the German prisoner of war camp at Limburg, where American, Russian, and French prisoners were liberated, 20 miles east of the Rhine River. Limburg was first entered by elements of the 9th Armored Division. The next day, 1st Army infantry units, following the armored spearheads, cleared the town.
Okay.
This is a prisoner of war camp or building that the prisoners first stayed in. This is Stalag 12A. I was kept in one that looks similar to this. We had to sleep on bunks that were made from wood, whatever, and there wasn't any straw. They have straw in this one here, but like they say, the roofs leaked, half the windows were out, and there was no heat.
Okay. Oh, wait a minute. I didn't have it on.
This is one of the prisoners that was liberated. This photo shows Private First Class Joseph Demler in the Lazaret Hospital Barracks, Stalag 12A at Limburg on March 28, 1945. His weight was down to 68 pounds after 3 months as a POW. He now lives in Port Washington, Wisconsin. Come up to Echternach, Germany. So that must have been the distance before we got to the place where I said we were captured. Go from here to here. So as far as whatever, I don't know what they generally give you an indication how many miles, you know. So I can't really tell. But that's while I was still with the U.S. Army.
And where were you captured?
In Luxembourg, Echternach.
Say that as a sentence.
Huh?
Say, I was captured in.
Or someplace.
I never heard it. No.
Okay.
But you don't have to sit. You could just say it, and when I put the map in.
Yeah, if I could find where the destination was, where we got liberated, you know. And again, maybe it's not on this part of the map. I don't even know.
So what are some of the towns that you marched through?
Let me see, Dempster, Maine. No, I remember one name there, but Wiesbaden, I think it was. Like I say, it's almost 60 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So what the hell? But I marched through some of these towns. It's Wiesbaden there. Again, maybe there's other streets has the same name and at the end, Baden or whatever. I don't know. But we marched to a place, we didn't know where we were, but in Germany, and that's where they were launching the V2 bombs from the ground, from underneath the ground. The Germans launched them. And, like I say, we didn't know where the hell we were half the time, really.
Go ahead.
I think I mentioned before that I was captured in Echternach, Luxembourg, and we marched, with the exception of being in two stalags for about maybe 2 weeks. The rest of the winter was marching across Germany from Echternach to Braunschweig, Germany. And how many miles that was, I can't estimate, but it was a lot of miles. And just going from town to town. And some people would put out drinking water. Other people in different towns would spit at you. And that just shows the difference of some people in some towns, that's all.
All right, you can tell me what this is for.
I guess almost every soldier that performed in combat would get one of these citations for meritorious service in combat during the Second World War in the European campaign.
That's pretty neat. Okay, so where were you year and date?
I was born in Jersey City, New Jersey, Hudson County, December 12th. See that? See that? I don't even know when I was born. December 14th, 1920. What else would you like to know that I can answer?
What type of a kid were you growing up? Were you interested in the Army or no?
No, not really.
You were drafted or?
Oh, that was a long time after that. Yes, I was drafted, yeah.
Okay, so you never really thought you'd have to go to war?
No, not really, no, right.
Okay, and do you have any brothers or sisters?
Never had any brothers and sisters, and I can't tell you why.
Okay, I guess that's all I need. That was very short.
Very short, right.
What nationality are you?
Well, my father and his father were born in England, so I'm English descent.
Okay. What about your mom, though?
Mom was born here in...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. How did you feel when you first got the news from the Army that Pop was missing in action?
Well, we felt sad, and then I had to call up his mother and my mother, and they all came over. And we didn't know he was a prisoner of war, he just had missing in action. So then, about 2 weeks later, the mailman came, and he didn't deliver anybody else's mail. He came right to my house to let us know, because then the mailman knew everything that was going on. So he skipped all the other houses and came right to ours to let us know that he was a prisoner of war and that he, wasn't killed.
Okay. What was your first reaction when you found out he was being drafted? In other words, did you think that might possibly happen?
No, we didn't think so, because when he was young, he had a mastoid operation, and he had a punctured eardrum. He worked in the shipyard, and he was a foreman, and we didn't think he would go. He had 2 children. I don't know if I mentioned that. So we didn't think he would go, so we were really surprised when he did.
What was your reaction when you knew did you know he was on his way home, or you didn't find out until he hit America?
We didn't really get any mail from him. We heard on the TV, no, did we have a TV then? No, we didn't have a TV. We heard on the radio that they liberated, and that's how we found out he was coming home. But we never knew, when or, how long it would be.
Did you have to go to greet him? Where did you first see him again?
No, he came right home.
Oh, to the front door?
came to the side door. Then he went to the front door, I think, because it was a front door and a side door. And that's when, you know, we met. And then from there we went up to his mother and my mother each took one. Alva went to my mother's, and Harold went to Whitey's mother. And we went for 2 weeks up to Lake Placid because he had to get checked over, you know, like to see what was wrong with him. And that was like, you know, everything was up there. They had all kinds of doctors for him, and then for the women they had planned like different things. We went into the Chisholm Chasm, is that how you say it? Down in the chasm where there's like all ice formed and stuff like that, and different things. And we ate in. We each had our own cottage up there, and then we all went to a big hall. It wasn't anything to do with the army. It was just that they had taken over this place, like they did for some down in Atlantic City.
Mm-hmm.
Went there when they came back. But we went up there, and
Did Pop look different when he came home? Did he look any different?
Thin, yeah. He wasn't as skinny as some of them that you see in the paper, you know. Those that were in Japan, they were treated worse. The Japanese were very bad. And
What'd you do? Just wrap your arms around him?
yeah. And yeah, he was thinner, but then he had to go back to, in the service, he had to go back to South Carolina or North Carolina and train men, you know. And I think he had to do that for like 3 months. I'm not sure on that.
How did you support yourself when Pop was in the Army?
Well, the government sent money, and Dad sent, Pop sent more money too. He took less on his check so that we would get more.
Okay.
So,
Did you find anything was hard while he was away? Harder for you to maintain or do?
No, of course, my mother lived down the street. My mother loved to cook, so we ate there more than we ate home. And other than that, well, things, you know, you couldn't get sugar, you couldn't get gasoline. I didn't drive at that time, but sugar, and you had stamps or tickets like, you're only allowed so much sugar, you're only allowed so much gasoline. I forget what else. I guess meat was hard to get too.
Was there anything that you had heard on the radio that made you worry?
Well, yeah, well, of course, they were still bombing over there, so they didn't know who they were bombing because, like, they would put the prisoners, like, in different places, so you never know who was getting bombed.
I just had a question. Now I forgot what I was going to ask. Oh, that's it. Is there anything you want to say?
No, that's fine.
So, how long did it take before you noticed Pop was back to normal with his weight?
Well, he hasn't stopped eating since he came home. He can eat. I can't. Where's my kiss? I didn't get a kiss today. Come here. I'm not going to get a